Something's waiting in the dark. Let me guess. It's tall, skinny, has no face, wears a spiffy business suit. Nope. Then maybe it's some weirdo on a mask. Actually, it's none of the above. Stay Out of the Basement was the second book in the original series and was published in 1992. R.L. Stine had just started the series with his previous book, Welcome to Dead House, which I swear must have had some influence on the first Resident Evil game. But is this book better than the two that I looked at before it? Well, I already said that I remember it being one of my favorites, so let's dive in. Now stop me if you've heard this one before. Our main character and her family have moved to a new home and weird things start happening. What? You have? Well, I certainly hope so if you've been reading these books for a long time, since most of the stories follow that idea just with different plots. Our main character is 12-year-old Margaret Brewer, whose family has just moved out to California, where her father had a job at the local botany place known as Polytech. Said family includes her father, Dr. Brewer, a botanist, her mother, who has two sons to take care of her sick sister, and her younger brother, Casey. Margaret is feeling a case of the blues. Why? Because ever since the move just a few weeks ago, Doc has been acting odd. He's distanced himself from the family, and we've stopped playing Frisbee and Nintendo with Casey, and never calls Margaret Princess, which, for the record, is a name she hates. He's also been spending an ungodly amount of time in the basement. Not quite to the level of an extreme World of Warcraft player, but he almost never comes up into the outside world. Not only that, but California is weird. Here it is in the middle of winter, and Margaret and Casey are outside in t-shirts and shorts. No, it kind of reminds me of that one time I lived in South Carolina for a few weeks, which, no offense to anyone who actually is from South Carolina might be watching this, but I hated that place, just saying. It was a brisk 60-something degree day, and there's people walking around like they're building up for a bad winter blizzard. There I am in a t-shirt and shorts, and I'm laughing at them. But anyway, Casey reveals that 4 weeks ago, Doc Brewer got fired from Polytech, but he never said why. Margaret thinks that Dad's boss, a fellow by the name of Martinez, fired him for doing weird experiments on the plants they were growing. Casey and Margaret head inside to get something to drink, and after slurping down some juice, decide to see what Dad's working on in the basement. This prompts Dad to scream the title of the book at them, warning them to stay out of the basement. No cinnamon sins joke this time. I did that for Monster Blood. Well, I guess this technically counts as a cinnamon sins joke, doesn't it? The next morning, Mom heads out to Tucson to take care of her sick sister and tasks Margaret and Casey with keeping an eye on their dad. Said Dad only comes out of the basement long enough to take Mom to the airport, but it's enough time for Margaret and Casey, as well as Margaret's friend Diane, to head into the basement to see what Dad's been up to. It's actually Diane's idea. Once they get down there, they see all sorts of weird plants growing since Dad's essentially turned the basement into a giant greenhouse. It's almost like a miniature rainforest. It's so hot that Casey has to take off his shirt to stay cool. Really, R.L. Stine? Preteen boys striptease. Fan service for the preteen girls reading this, I guess. While in the basement, they hear what sounds like breathing and moaning coming from the plants. This creeps them out, so they head back upstairs. Diane leaves, but Casey remembers that he left her shirt in the basement, and he rushes down to get it just as Dad gets home. Margaret goes into the basement after Casey and spends a long time down there. Dad's distracted by the neighbors, and they's distracted by the rose bush. Speaking of being distracted, Casey's too distracted by his shirt to notice a plant getting ready to strangle him. They manage to get away from the plants after one of them starts tying Casey up. Weird. But are blocked at the stairs by Dad. Rather than yell at them and start beating them, he calmly tells them that he's disappointed that they didn't listen to him, but he's glad they're okay. Margaret and Casey are quick to note that this seems a little out of character for him. Dad tells the kids he'll explain what he's doing with the plants one of these days. He's just too busy right now, so he doesn't have the time. Okay, no harm, no foul. Things can't get possibly any weirder, right?
Hey, what could possibly go wrong?
The next day, Margaret calls her mom, who tells her that her aunt's gone into surgery and things went a little pear-shaped. On the home front, Dad's becoming more introverted, barely talking to the kids, just making these weird grunting noises, and he's installed a lock on the basement door. Margaret goes home to get some lunch and finds her dad already stuffing his face with something. About time he remembered to... Wait, is he eating plant food? Oh my god, he's eating fertilizer! When she tells Casey, he laughs at her and thinks that Dad's going through some weird phase. Yeah, I remember the time I started eating my own shit and drinking my own piss. That was fun. Margaret thinks that Dad might actually be turning into a plant, causing Casey to spew out all sorts of plant-related puns. Dude, leave the puns to Chug of Conroy and Exan's shadow, okay? After a small filler moment where Margaret hangs out with Diane, patting is all it is, Margaret comes home to Casey trying to play Frisbee with Dad, who's now sporting a hat, something he's never worn before. When the Frisbee knocks the hat off his head, we see that his hair has been replaced with plants. Dad sits down with the kids and tells them that this is just a temporary side effect of working with the plants and that it will all go away soon. He then tells them that he's trying to create a new kind of plant by splicing plant DNA with human DNA. Yep, I'm sure that's gonna work so well. Just ask the folks over at Jurassic World about the Indominus Rex. By the way, that movie is awesome. Later that night, Margaret spies on her dad as he goes into the bathroom to wash his hands after he's cut himself. And she sees that he's bleeding green blood. The next day, Casey and Margaret hear moaning coming from the basement. They go upstairs to talk to their dad about it, only to find clumps of dirt and worms in his bed. Yuck. Needless to say, the kids are more than a little freaked out by this. Really, I can't say that I blame them. As they're trying to figure out what to do, Dad has them sit down for lunch. A new dish he's made up. And yes, it's plant food. He starts yelling at them when they don't eat, but he gets distracted by Mr. Martinez at the door. Dad takes Mr. Martinez to the basement to show him around, giving the kids enough time to throw out their lunch. The kids go into the basement a couple of days later when Dad goes next door to help the neighbor put in a sink. Powerhouse excitement! Things have gotten a little crazier down here with roots and tendrils growing everywhere. After Casey gets scared by a squirrel, they start to head upstairs, but stop when they hear some moaning coming from the nearby closet. They find Mr. Martinez's coat and tie and confront Dad about it, but he doesn't give them a straight answer, just saying that Mr. Martinez must have forgotten him when he left. Yeah. Given that the kids never saw him leave, I'm gonna call bullshit. A couple of days later, they get the news that Mom's coming home. Her sister's doing much better now, and she should be here within the hour. Good, then maybe they can tell Mom about how cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs Dad's gotten. Casey wants to go fly some kites while they wait, but the kites are all down in the basement, so he picks a lock and they go down there to find them. What they find instead is a bunch of plants with human features in the closet. We're talking plants with arms, plants with legs, plants with human faces. Oh god, that's starting to sage from that one episode of Inuyasha. Oh, and they also find Dad? But how can that be? Dad's at the airport picking up Mom. Well, as Dad explains, that version of him is a clone, a plant/human hybrid they cooked up down here. Once Dad regains his composure, he picks up an axe just as the fake Dad comes into the basement. They do this "I'm the real one, no, I'm the real one" bit before Margaret takes the axe, and now she must choose which version of Dad to kill. Well, remember how earlier she saw Dad, or at least one version of him, bleeding green blood? That's how they determine who the real Dad is. Casey cuts both versions of Dad with a small knife, and as expected, one bleeds red while the other bleeds green. The one that bleeds green gets chopped in half. Oh yeah, and Mr. Martinez is still in the closet. Let's get him out of there. A few days later, Margaret is chilling in the backyard when all the plants start talking to her, each one saying that it is her real dad. So that Stay Out of the Basement holds up much better than the last two books I looked at, thank God. Like with Say Cheese and Die, I'm not going to go over the characters because there's really not much to talk about, but I will say that this book is worth the read if you get the chance. I wouldn't classify it as scary, but rather leans more towards the suspenseful side of the fence. So I'll leave you guys with that and see you next month for It Came From Beneath the Sink.
Feed me. Does it have to be human? Feed me. Does it have to be mine? Feed me. Where am I supposed to get it? Feed me, Seymour. Feed me all night long. That's right, boy. You can do it. Feed me, Seymour. Feed me all night long. 'Cause if you feed me, Seymour, I can grow up big and strong.
You eat blood, Audrey, too, let's face it. How am I supposed to keep on feeding you? Kill people?
I make it worth your while.
What?
You think this is all coincidence, baby? The sudden success around here Depressed coverage?
Look, you're a plant. An inanimate object.
Does this look inanimate to you, punk? If I can talk and I can move, who's to say I can't do anything I want?
Like what?
Like deliver, pal. Like see you get everything your sacred, greasy, heart desires. Serves you like a Cadillac car on a gas shot on jackpot. How about a date with Hedy Lamar? You're gonna get it if you want it, baby. How would you like to be a big wheel, dining out for every meal? I'm the plant, you make it all real. You're gonna get